Welcome back, everyone. Episode 7 of the Backbeat. A very special episode because I'm not alone for once. I have a friend, a very good friend of mine, Jochan Embley, childhood friends, best man at my wedding, and also music aficionado, and journalist too. And that's kind of the centerpiece of the episode and discussion today because Jochan wrote a very interesting article a couple of years ago for The Guardian. And so this episode won't be too drum focused, but it will certainly be music focused, music landscape, streaming services, all that good stuff. And first off, thank you, Jochen, for making the time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Could you start off by? I initially was thinking that I'll do an outline of the article, but then it may make much more sense if you do it. So can you just summarize it for people that aren't familiar? We will link it in the description anyway, but from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So I was a music journalist for a newspaper for a number of years, and obviously a big part of that job was finding new music, writing about new music. Trying to find things that were maybe off the sort of beaten path a little bit, but deserve attention. And then about 5 years ago, I got COVID and got quite ill from it. Thankfully, better now, but yeah, for a good 4 or 5 years, it was pretty debilitating. So I had to stop working for a little bit. And yeah, I obviously, love music. It's what I did for a living, more or less, writing about it. So during my sort of illness, the music was a big comfort. Something that got me through a lot of bad times. But I realized after a while that because my music was almost entirely coming from Spotify, um, it had smooth the sort of hard edges of my music taste, and I basically was just channeling and funneling me towards the stuff that absolutely 100% knew I liked. So I found out I was just listening to the same music over and over again. My sort of, without even realizing it, my love of discovering new music had just disappeared. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think that Spotify and its algorithms and how it realizes sort of quite sophisticatedly who you are, what's going on in your life, and what it thinks you want, how that had sort of hastened the slide towards just quite a boring music taste, I think. And once I realized that, it was quite a big epiphany. So I took measures to try and fix it, and then wrote about that whole sort of experience and the wider streaming ecosystem in the article, because I think obviously for me it's quite a specific case. The way I my profession before, and then the way I realized this was happening to me. But I think everyone has things in their life, whether it's just had a kid or go through some stressful times, or they're just like other things are going on in their life, they're too busy to look out for the music they used to find. And I think a lot of us will get sort of swept into this quite narrow lane of just listening to the same music over and over again. And I think that's profitable Spotify, and it's what they're trying to do. I mean, they say music discovery, but I'm not sure if I strictly agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, before I actually continue, I was going to say, the article itself is quite focused and targeted on Spotify. I use Spotify. I don't know. Is it more or less a similar thing with Apple Music and other platforms?
Well, funny enough, since writing this article, I've moved off Spotify. I've stopped my subscription. I mean, partly because of this, but there were a lot of reasons really, and I moved on to Apple Music because I don't want to sound hypocritical, because I've written a piece about how streaming has caused some problems, but I think as a music fan, purely forgetting the whole wider ecosystem, as a music fan, obviously streaming is amazing because you have the world's music at your fingertips, and I'm personally not ready to give that up. So I moved on to Apple Music, and I think part of the reason I've enjoyed Apple Music is because its algorithms seem far less intrusive. Seems quite a bit more. I'm not trying to slander Apple Music here, but it feels like the algorithms are less sophisticated in a way. And obviously, it does offer you stuff, and but it's so almost predictable. It's like, oh, you've listened to Pink Floyd. Do you want to listen to Pink Floyd again? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of stuff. So and it feels quite a bit more curated as well, in the sense that they have, I think Spotify has this as well, but Apple Music, they got their radio station, and they've tried to position themselves as a bit more of a yeah, I guess curated service. But so yeah, I've been using Apple Music as the sort of final destination of my music listening, but I've tried to sort of rebuild the rest of that sort of music listening influence from various sources, and then, like I said, I sort of end up on Apple Music when I'm listening to it.
Yeah, and well, I mean, we're also saying all this without even having touched on the whole pricing system and model and payout, you know, for the artists that sign up to. I think certainly Spotify get a lot of bad press about that, in terms of the payout for artists is just ridiculous. But I never hear Apple Music bad press on that same thing. I don't know if it's the same.
I think Spotify is kind of a magnet for just any sort of grievances with streaming, because I think it was the one that obviously kicked off the whole revolution, and it's just by far the biggest service as well. I don't know what it is now, but I think when I wrote the article, it was something like over 600 million paying subscribers, so it's like an absolute juggernaut. But yeah, this is the thing. I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like guilt using streaming services, because you know that unless you're like Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, you know, the absolute sort of top level artists, they're basically making a pittance from it. So yeah, I think for a lot of artists, when it's Spotify these days, or any sort of streaming service, is effectively just a marketing tool. People just aren't making music from making money from music releases anymore. I mean, maybe a little bit from physical releases, but again, you've got to be really at the top end of the market to make any sort of viable living from that. So yeah, that is the sort of other side of it. But to be honest, I think, like a lot of people, I think I'm almost trapped by streaming, because if I wanted to rebuild a owned catalog, I've got two choices. I can either download it illegally, which again is probably even worse, you know, marginally, because they're only making a pittance of streaming, but probably even worse for the artists. Or you buy it, which I just can't afford to do, because, you know, I've got like 15 years worth of music on my stream, and it's like, no, I can't afford to buy all that again. So yeah, I think artists and fans are sort of trapped by the streaming system, and I don't really see a way out in terms of that. But I think you've just got to support artists in other ways. Ultimately, if you like an artist, go see a gig, buy a t-shirt, buy a vinyl if it's like one of your favorites and you can afford to do so. Like, yeah, there are other ways, but in terms of the actual streaming, I think, like I say, I think it's effectively just a marketing tool for artists these days.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also agree with the crux of the article itself about discovery of new music. And it's one of those things that, and I'd be interested to hear, you know, listeners and viewers, if the same has happened to you. It's the kind of thing that once it's made clear to you, then you become much more aware of it. And it's because thinking about it from an app and company and usability point of view, people, the Spotify and really any kind of app developer and creator wants you to enjoy your time on the app, right? And so serving you the music that it knows you like, in their minds, ensures that if they throw you a curveball, I don't know, if you listen to mainly pop and then they throw you a psychedelic 70s prog, I don't know, the user will be like, what the hell is this? You know, I'm not, this sucks.
Yeah.
So it's this really weird scenario in which I think they're having to tread this line of giving you stuff that, I don't know, maybe giving you like 80 to 90% recommendations that are safe, and then maybe a tiny margin of things that aren't. I'm that's being reinforced for me basically every time I use Spotify now. So when you put it on shuffle, when you put it on radio or whatever, it's like, oh, you like the Beatles? Have you tried Paul McCartney? Yeah. It's like it's a strange situation, and you have to go out of your way to find new music. And you say in the article, like, What was a bit when you were saying like you were going through forums, you were digging through record label releases, and also this article was written a couple of years ago now.
Mm.
In terms of your go-to methods of finding new music, is there any like things you'd recommend or like a cheat sheet?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, because I kind of made the point in the article that the way of fixing this isn't revolutionary. It's kind of in the same sense that people, um, people complain about how they're addicted to TikTok or scrolling Twitter, or whatever. And it's like, well, the way you solve that is by turning your phone off. And it sounds sort of flippant to say because it's not quite as easy as that, but at the same time, it is. It's kind of this weird dichotomy. I think it's the same about streaming, where it's the old ways of music discovery still exist. Like you can just as easily as open up Spotify, you can open up, I don't know, the BBC Sounds app and listen to Six Music, or you can go on NTS, or you can literally just have a physical FM radio and turn it on. Like that still exists. We're still like humans choosing the music. You can still go to gigs. You can still turn up early and see the support acts. You can still go to your local record store, talk to a person behind the counter and ask them what their favorite album of the month is. These things are all still there and never actually went away. I think just the problem with Spotify is it becomes, and just streaming generally, it becomes so all consuming and just becomes such a 360 sort of audio experience that you just forget that these other things exist. So I think a lot of ways it's not actually that difficult. It's just reminding yourself of these places exist and then just changing your habits, because ultimately that's what Spotify and these other streaming services are. They're habit forming apps, because they know absolutely everything about your listening habits. They know when you listen, they know how long you listen to something before you skip, they know what your favorite genre is, down to these like really super micro genres that no one would ever in their right mind talk about, but they know it. So it's easy for it to just feel like everything, especially now that they've got podcasts and they've got videos and all these things. But yeah, so for me personally, I've just sort of taken it back to basics, and like I say, sort of use streaming as the sort of endpoint of your music listening rather than the whole experience. So yeah, listen to a cool radio show, find a DJ you like, go on Reddit if you can bear it to see what people are talking about, and then once you found stuff, yeah, sure, by all means listen to it streaming. If you love it, buy it, buy a record by a DJ, like I say. But yeah, it's a strange thing. I think you just got to just change the mindset. That's ultimately what it is, and I think you'll benefit from it. But the interesting thing is, because I stayed on Spotify for a little bit before I moved, and when I really tried to open up my sort of horizons again when it came to music listening, Spotify realized that's what's happening, and then just did a full 180. Was like, oh, okay, this guy loves weird stuff. He loves stuff that isn't what he's normally listening to. So it just like completely turned on its head and was like, okay, let's just give him whatever. And it just went haywire for a while. And obviously it was nowhere near as like effective as when it was like, oh, this guy's listened to the Cocktail Twins 100 times. Let's give him something, like give him some more like dream pop, whatever. It kind of lost its mind a little bit, which was kind of exciting, but also just not that good, because it's like, I don't, this isn't really the point. You can't predict the unpredictable, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's fascinating to be honest, but yeah, I think to sum up, I think just the simple old-fashioned ways are the ways that still work ultimately.
Yeah. Again, I think we're very aligned on this. I'm making notes because I've got a terrible memory and I just forget the points that I want to make. Because one of the things that pops into mind as you were speaking, when you were talking about essentially it needs to come from the individual. A big part of Spotify and streaming platforms and algorithms that serve you content is the convenience and how kind of like comfortable and commodified it is. You really don't have to do much. Spotify just prepares a place for you. Here you go. And if you enjoy that, that's absolutely fine. If your experience of social media and streaming platforms is okay, then that's cool. But if you have this frustration that you're kind of stuck in a loop, you have the power to break out of it using various options. And I think therein lies a very interesting point to do with taste.
Mm.
And I was having this chat with someone, I can't remember when, and similar to this point, like I was having a discussion, I think with my wife, about holiday destinations. This may seem irrelevant, but I'll stay with me. I'll work backwards. And we basically were like, uh, your your next holiday could be your new favorite destination, right, in the world. Um, it's a place you've never been to, right? Let's say you go to, I don't know, New Zealand, South Korea, wherever it may be. You've never been there, but when you go, it's your favorite place in the world. In order to establish that, you need to go there. You need to try it. Similarly with music, and this is something that I try to do, is to listen to new stuff, because for all I know, my favorite genre ever in the history of music is some kind of Latin, Colombian, I don't know, cumbia from the 80s, you know, or like there's some artist from North Africa that's just kind of hiding out there that I need to discover still. And it takes time. It's kind of like sifting for gold. And maybe for like, if you listen to 20 albums out there, maybe one is only worthwhile. And if you get a thrill from that discovery, then that's a great feeling.
Mm.
And in my mind, it boils down to that whole process of finding albums that look interesting, then listen to them, making a judgment and so on, versus having to do very little and Spotify just like, you know, here's a playlist. Don't worry, you don't have to lift a finger. The ease of it, people usually lean to the Spotify way, which is a paradigm that is repeated across so many different apps and platforms and services these days, where everything is streamlined and made easier, so you don't have to worry. We got your back. We can do this. But as I said, ultimately, if you're enjoying that process, it's absolutely fine. Like it's I think it's perhaps just a little flawed for people that want something new and different and spicy, because then all of a sudden the responsibility is on you to go and find it, because streaming platforms may not be able to help you out so much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I made the point in the article, like, I am genuinely grateful for the service that Spotify provided me when I wasn't well, because, you know, more or less everything in my life was like so turned upside down by it when I was, not feeling well. And to have that sort of reliable, I can just open Spotify, I know it'll give me something that will just calm me down and make me feel okay. That was great. And I don't sort of, hold any grudges against it for that. It's just, like you say, if you want something else in music, then ultimately I don't think Spotify is strictly the place for you. And I think also what you're saying there about sort of kind of like sifting for gold, I think hearing stuff you don't like can almost be as invigorating as hearing something you do like, because I think if you completely give yourself over to the algorithms, you're not going to necessarily hear everything that you love. You're probably almost certainly not going to hear anything you hate. And I think it's almost knowing what you really don't like helps you, sort of shunts you towards what you actually do like. Same with any art form, really. You watch a film you just don't like at all, and it just doesn't vibe with you at all, then I often find myself thinking about those more than I think about the films that I loved, you know, because it's like sort of challenges you and your tastes and sort of sharpens your instinct for what you do and don't like. It's the same with music, and I think kind of the point you're making, like I think music discovery is a hobby ultimately. I think that's what streaming has kind of made us forget, that this is like an active hobby, to go out and find new music. And like any hobby, like learning an instrument or painting or whatever, it takes work and it can be frustrating at times, and it can kind of come up quite a few duds. But when it pays off and you're like, oh, I can finally play that solo, or I can finally cycle for 20 miles, whatever. It's like a sense of achievement is something that you'll just never get when you're being like sort of spoon fed these things. So I think it pays off in the end, but it just, like I think, like I said before, it takes a whole sort of mentality switch, and it is difficult because, like any social media, these are like multi-million, in many cases multi-billion pound companies whose sole purpose is to keep you engaged, and it's like they're using literally psychological warfare against us to make us do it. So there's no shame in sort of falling in line with these things, because that's literally what they're sort of manipulating you to do. But at the same time, it's good to remember that there is always another option, and in many ways, I think that can be way more exciting.
Yeah, we live in an interesting time, and I think the digital age, I don't know, maybe it's just my kind of experience. The people in my life, there are a few people that have kind of gone more analog, and they're trying to push away. Well, actually, I mean, you're a good example of that, of just trying to go back to a simpler time, because there's a lot of like static and noise otherwise. And I also want to say that the point about listening or watching, whatever, to something bad or something that you don't like, probably a better way to phrase it, is just as useful, I think. Yeah, because it just paints a better picture of where your limits are, where your taste begins and ends, in just as useful a way as if you find some absolute gold.
Yeah.
That was lovely. If I know this was a bit of a different episode, if you obviously have any questions or thoughts on the topic, this new order of how music is discovered and served and consumed, just drop a comment or message me on Instagram, send me an email, dan@drum.dog, sorry. And if there are any other kind of topics, discussions, debates that are drum or music related, let us know, because I think with these kind of episodes, the aim is that they spark some kind of thoughts in people, like, yeah, that's true, this is something I haven't thought about, or maybe it is something I've really thought about but isn't being discussed as much. I don't know. We hope this was of use. Thank you again, Jochan. Is there any final thoughts or recommendations?
No, I was going to say I got plenty of comments on the Guardian article telling me that I was out of touch and completely missed the point. So if anyone wants to add to that, they're more than welcome. But yeah, just one thing I was going to say was there's an excellent book by the journalist Liz Pelly called Mood Machine, which is about, we'll say, all the things that I've been saying in far more intellectual and well-researched ways. So if anyone wants to know more about Spotify and how it's just completely changed us and music, then that is a fantastic place to start and possibly finish, because it's a very good book.
Wonderful. We can chuck that link in the description along with the link to the article itself if people want to get involved. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in. Drop a little follow and like and comment if you will. It always helps. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you very much for hanging out. If you enjoyed the episode, please do follow, drop a rating, and share with a fellow drummer. It really does help. If you want to take your drumming further, head over to drum.dog to see how we can help. Until then, catch you in the next one.